It's my pleasure to welcome Ashar Aziz. He's the co-founder and CEO of the TiE50 winner in the social space, Fireye, which is doing tremendous work in cybersecurity business. Ashar, first of all, congratulations.
Thank you so much, and we are proud and excited and honored to have won this award and to be here today. The company was founded on the premise that the attackers would become much more sophisticated over time. In 2005 timeframe, when I started the company, the attackers were mostly teenagers working out of basements. It was obvious that if somebody with malicious intent could plant their software on somebody else's computer, then the range of offensive possibilities was very wide and large. And so we predicted that cybercrime would become a major threat to cyberspace, that cyber espionage would become a major threat to cyberspace, and that potentially cyber attacks could be used in the context of cyber warfare, which is attacks on critical infrastructure at the nation-state level. And we have seen two of these threats pretty much manifest themselves in full-blown epidemic proportions. So cybercrime and cyber espionage are in full threat from both state actors, which is intelligence agencies of large countries targeting other nation-states, as well as non-state actors targeting both state and non-state entities. The premise was that as these attackers would become sophisticated, they would use techniques and tools of attacks that would make them very difficult to detect using conventional defensive technology. So I started Fireye for the reason of creating this next generation threat protection blueprint.
So help us understand, you probably have clients, and as you mentioned a little bit earlier, Fortune 500. Then you have the federal government agencies. How are they different or how are they equal in terms of what the requirements are?
That's a great question. One of the interesting things about the federal government users, and we have many of them, is they are by far one of the largest recipients of these very sophisticated cyber attacks. And so I personally owe an incredible debt of gratitude to my customers in the federal government for A, highlighting the importance of this area, and B, guiding us in terms of the product development, because they were able to see how sophisticated these threats were and how they were able to infiltrate their network. So they've been able to give us a lot of guidance in which we have taken into our product roadmap. The Fortune 500 are now becoming very aware, although I think 4 years ago they were not so aware of the incredible threats that they face. So the Fortune 500 has been a lagging from a comprehension and understanding perspective, the ability to see the threats. The federal government saw it very early because they were, like I said, seeing these attacks and the victims of these attacks for a very long time. The governments are a particularly interesting target market for us. However, the Global 2000 is probably a bigger market for us. So the Global 2000 and the global federal public sector is the fairly substantial opportunity that we're going after. However, having said that, I would say there is no sector that is truly immune to these attacks. Mid-market companies, whether it's law firms or hedge funds or credit unions, face a similar enemy because these attack toolkits are widely available now. You don't need to be a $1 billion funded offensive organization in the intelligence agencies of some government to have these kinds of attacks available. The cost to attack is low. Therefore, cyber criminal gangs targeting even what you might consider low-value targets, such as the mid-market, are those attacks are happening, and we have selective engagement with mid-market customers as well.
Sure, I'm going to switch gears, take you back to your first company in the cloud space. Tell us a bit about that, and then I want to ask you, what made you transition from cloud to security?
That's a great question. So my first company was called TerraSpring, and I started that in 1990 with the belief that the computing needed to move into a cloud model and on a on-demand model, which means that computing, storage, networking resources could be provisioned and dynamically allocated. And so I started a company in that area. It received about $70 million in funding. It was probably, I would say, 8 years ahead of its time. I think those concepts are pretty prevalent now. I think 8 years ago, the IT office didn't really understand how to take a cloud computing, dynamically allocated, virtualized infrastructure and make that part of their IT environment. I think people are now figuring out that this is something important to do. So the difference here is that and to connect the dots, the technology that I use in Fireye leverages at its core virtualization. So that is something, and managing large-scale virtualized environments is something that we figured out how to do in the context of my first startup. And in fact, the key technical talent from my first startup is in my second startup, so they were able to take all the learning from that experience. And prior to doing that company, I was a distinguished scientist at Sun working on network security. So I put those two pieces together, and that's sort of how we came up with Fireye.
So when you're working for a big organization like Sun, in some ways you're the entrepreneur, then you figure out how to take this to the market and become the entrepreneur. And a lot of us who come to TiE50 are in this sphere. We're trying to cross the bridge.
Correct.
What advice would you give them?
The first advice I would give is don't take too long. It is a difficult decision, but if it's in your blood, then you should do it. That's number one. Number two, it is important to understand that a startup involves an intellectual effort, first and foremost, but it also involves a tremendous emotional effort, and that they have to be prepared to make that emotional investment, and that they have to have buy-in from their family when they do that. I think if your family is behind you, then you can make that investment. It's an investment in both, like I said, intellect and courage.
Is there a moment when you think you'll say, this is the time for me, or it just, it just grows on you?
I think you have to find something that you're really passionate about. And if you find that's the moment, when you say, this is the problem, I know how to solve this problem. It's an important problem that needs to be solved. And I'm going to give it my best to solve this problem. Entrepreneurs is really fundamentally what we are trying to do in society is solve major problems. And those major problems, when we solve them well, people are willing to pay for that solution, whether it's a service, whether it's a product of some kind. That is the key. So my first and foremost advice is find a major problem that you believe you have a special advantage in knowing how to solve, and then apply all your intensity towards that, and bring the best people who can complement your skill set, because no one person can do everything. So when you've identified this, I frequently say this, the output of an entrepreneur is not a product. So the blueprint of the product or the service is one thing. The output of an entrepreneur is an organization, right? So you must understand the blueprint of the organization and what pieces need to go in which facets of the organization, because it's the organization that builds a product and a service. The entrepreneur builds the organization.
Great answer. Thank you. TiECon, as you know, is the largest conference for entrepreneurs anywhere in the world, and TiE50 has achieved such great laurels in the last 4 years that it started. Personally, for you, what does it mean to be a winner?
I'm personally honored, and I'm honored on behalf of the team. And I think it's really the team that deserves the recognition here, because we're the ones out there, we stand on the stage and we take the award, but I know how hard this team has worked to put the product together and put all the pieces of the business together in terms of marketing and sales. So on behalf of the team and of course myself, we're very honored to have this recognition for this, like I said, second year in a row. And I'm hoping this is the last time, because hopefully we'll be too big to be honored at the startup in the future.
Well, wishing you all the best, Ashar.
All right,
thank you so much.
All right, thank you.